to my channel where I talk about books and bookish things and other nonsense. I have got the dreaded lurgy. It's not, you know, the old panini, but it's a cold and a very sore throat. So we'll see how we go, shall we? Hope you're all well. Hope you're keeping well. It's finally the end of January. Honestly, it lasted like 43 years, didn't it? But anyway, this is my January wrap up. This is going to be quick fire because I read 26 books in January. I must try and do these weekly because a lot to remember. So we're going to start. Let's just get into it, shall we? Let's just get into it. So we're going to start with the Kindles, which was 19 this month, or last month. It's now February. And the first one was this one, Chasing the Dragon by Mark Towers. This is out on the 23rd of March and I read it as an ARC. I love Mark's work. He writes really twisted, perverse stories. And this is his first full-length novel. And it's about a superhero in a very run-down town that's just hopeless. Everyone feels hopeless. It's basically run by a criminal underclass. And this man called Simon decides to become the superhero of the town. Reformo. Great cover, isn't it? It is dark and twisted and it's just superb. It's just such a good story. He's a very complex, sad, flawed, traumatized character. And, you know, it turns out sometimes the superhero has to turn criminal to get stuff done. Such a good book. As I say, it's out on the 23rd of March. I would recommend it. It's really good. Next, I read On a Clear Day, You Can See Block Island by Gage Greenwood. This, again, is an ARC. I'm not sure when it's out. Probably should have looked that up. I think it's out this month. I've got a feeling it's the 10th of February. I love Gage's work. I loved Bunker Dogs, if you haven't read that. It's a fantastic book about, you know, vampires at the end of the world, basically. This one is a more traditional creature feature horror. It's about a family who move into this house and they're playing this game where they shout at each other through the rooms. And then the last room, which is the oldest daughter, they hear crunching noises. And when they open the door, she's being eaten. And that's how it starts. And then it goes into the future. I think it's about 4 years where the family's fallen apart. And they decide that, the children decide they have to go back to Block Island and face whatever this creature was. And so that's the story. I found the beginning really good. And like the first few chapters were excellent. And then it was like a story explaining the background, which slowed the book right down for me. Because then the last 25% is fast-paced and thrilling. So I understand the point of having to talk about and explain where these people were in their life after such a traumatic event. But it did slow it down for me and I got a little bit bored in the middle. But it was a good book. I enjoyed it. But yeah, I would have preferred not that bit not to be in or to be shorter, maybe. I'm just here to have a little drink of tea. See if my throat will hold out, loves. Look at my mug. I'm going to show you the other side because it's the best thing about this. Ooh! It's the bad girls of Disney. Anyway, next, Blessed Skeletons by Robert Weaver. This was sent to me again as an ARC. This is a sumptuous gothic banquet. It's about this man who's a judge and he's been exiled from his small town, his hometown, which is kind of festering and rotting. Oh, it's so good, this book. And he's called back because the man that he'd sentenced to death as a judge is supposedly back and killing people. This is true gothic horror. The imagery is stunning. It's dark and macabre and all the way through with the most beautiful illustrations by an artist. It's just a fantastic book. If you love gothic horror, You'll love this one. The Christmas Morning Massacre by Nasser Rabadi. This is the first in the Ravenhill Butcher series. And this was great. I read this early in January. It was obviously part of Christmas, but I didn't get to it. And it's about this group of teenagers who go to one of the teenagers' houses. And they're talking about this legend of this butcher who had killed a couple of teenage girls many years ago. And it happens again. And it's all very gory, very gruesome. It's great fun. It's a very short read. It's only a novella, a couple of 100 pages. So, yeah, cracker if you want something for next Christmas. Everything is Temporary by John Cohn. I love John. What he wrote /Tag, which I really enjoyed last year, which was basically a reality show with a serial killer. It was great fun. Locked in a house trying to find the way out. Brilliant book. This is a little bit more thoughtful and poignant, this one. So it's about this family, and the daughter is having a hard time because her best friend's died, and she starts hanging out with this old man who's got a house that is decorated 365 days of the year for Christmas. And sick children or terminally ill children go there to bring some joy to their lives. But the dad then remembers a similar house when he was a child with a Mrs. Santa Claus and the creepy things that happened in that house. And the fact that she wasn't who she said she was. This takes all the things you think about of Christmas. Christmas trees, nutcrackers, candy canes, snowmen, and completely subverts them into things of horror. It's such a good book. Fantastic cover too, isn't it? Can you hear me? I hope you can hear me because my voice is going. Let's see if that helped. Yeah. Next one. The Third Hunter by Phil Baker. This I also read as an ARC. Phil wrote The House on Hanging Hill Lane, which is a fantastic story of basically a lane that is the protective force for the evil coming into the world. This is the second book. You can read it as a standalone, and it's far darker. The girl who was in the first book, Daphne, is back in this, and she realises that the darkness that she subdued in the first book is back and far more dangerous. There is also the creepiest kid in this. Oh my God, so creepy. At the same time, there's an accident at sea where this yacht sinks and everybody's behaving like zombies. One of her friends goes missing. It's just excellent book. And the ending, oh my! I've come to love these characters, and Phil actually lives just up the road from me. The ending, man, that blew my mind. I was just like, what? What are you doing? But anyway, fantastic. Really good book. That is out now. The Beast of Lofby Island by Matt Doyle. I love Matt, and one of my favourite reads last year was called Allurus, which he wrote, which was a speculative sci-fi. This is a creature feature with an edge. So it's basically this family who just don't like anybody who they believe to be undesirable. That includes the homeless, the LGBTQIA, the immigrants. And so they kidnap them basically from the mainland and take them to Lofby Island and dump them. But this night, when they try to do it to one particular person, something else is hunting them. And soon the town is in the depths of running for their lives. Such a good read. Such a good take on the werewolf mythology. There's no silver bullets here, no full moon. It's completely different. It takes the idea of a werewolf or werewolfism as a virus. It's very, very good. Yeah, excellent. Enjoyed that. Love a creature feature. Bit of a difference Peter Kay, Big Adventures on the Small Screen. I love Peter Kay. It makes me laugh. He talks about everyday life and how ridiculously amusing it is. And this is basically his story of when he started to be involved with television. He's told with his trademark humour. It's very funny, laugh out loud minutes, and an interesting perspective on television. So I always love a biography. You know, I read a lot of horror, and I don't generally have nightmares, but I'm not daft enough to read horrific horror just before I go to sleep. So I usually have a non-fiction or a biography running alongside everything else I'm reading, and that was last month's. Next, Masters of Death by Olivia Blake. Oh, I need another drink. Oh, how have you been, loves? Thank God it's February. It's on my birthday month in February, by the way. I am 55 in a few weeks. Not quite sure how that happened, really, because I'm only 20 in my head. But anyway, I digress. Masters of Death by Olivia Blake. This was the first read of 24 Vamps book club, which is run by Kirsty, and it was all right. I don't think this author is for me. I have DNF'd every other book I read by her. I did finish this one, but I hated Atlas 6. Her writing's just not for me. You know what I mean? And this starts off really well with the idea that Death's gone missing and his nephew and a group of otherworldly creatures are trying to find out what's happened. It starts off really well. It's very sarcastic, very humorous, but then it just gets kind of bogged down mainly in too much dialogue. It reads like fan fiction. Nothing wrong with fan fiction, by the way. I like fan fiction myself, but I don't expect to see it in a published book. There's so much dialogue and so many characters that the story kind of loses focus, and you can't see the point of it. And then the ending's quite good. The good parts of it are when Death narrates it. That's when the good parts are. So yeah, it wasn't my thing, but I expect other people loved it. Days at the Morisaki Bookshop by Satoshi Yagasawa. This is a Japanese translation, and it's about a girl who finds out that her boyfriend's marrying someone else, and so she goes to stay with her uncle, who runs a bookshop on a street full of bookshops just outside of Tokyo. And there she finds herself, basically. She finds herself in stories and in friendship and family, and it's just a really beautifully gentle read, do you know? It really is. And it's a bookshop, so I mean, you know, there's that. Next, Shadow Apocalypse by BC Hollywood. This was sent to me by the author. It's out now as far as I know, and this is dystopian end of the world in Ireland. It is explicit, so trigger warnings for that. But you know, there's no rules. Society is broken down, and these two men are doing what they want to, who they want, whenever they want to, and then they meet up with a woman who is not who she seems. It's a great story through a end of the world scenario, through rural Ireland. It's just fantastic. Such a good story. But as I say, there's some very explicit scenes in this. If that's not your thing, please avoid. But otherwise, if you like a really good, gritty, dystopian, apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic world, you'll love this. Next, Cursed by Lee Kenny. This is a debut novella by Lee, who I know. She's lovely. She's also Irish. Oh, so there might be an Irish theme in this. There's a couple of Irish writers. And this is just fabulous. If you enjoyed The Ring or The Grudge, you know, there's the Japanese versions, which are far more scary, right? It's about a rubbish man, a garbage man, who is handed a box by this woman who asks him to take it. And she goes, yeah, sure, throws it in the lorry. When he gets back home, the box is on his counter in the kitchen. And then he finds little handprints on his shower curtain. or shower screen, right? Starts to find long dark hairs on his back, wakes up with marks all over his body. It's such a creepy read. It's so creepy. And packs hell of a punch for such a short story. It's only, I think it's a couple of 100 pages. And the ending, oh, yeah. Read it, my friend. It's everywhere at the moment, and there's a reason for that. It is really bloody good. When the Cold Gets Hungry by Asia Brito Guerrero. This is a short story available on Kindle Unlimited, and it's fantastic. I love Asia's work. I loved Butterscotch, which was one of my favourite. Was my favourite read of December, which was a revenge tale. This one is about a mother and her children who moved to Arizona, and they're in the communal pool at their complex one day, and suddenly there's an announcement and a freak ice age descends. They have to try and find safety with some other people, and apart from the fact that, you know, it's deadly, the ice age, so if you go out in it you die, there's also something within the storm, something hungry. It's such a great short story. If you want a really quick, fast, gory, gruesome, what the hell kind of story, grab that one. It's fantastic. I've got a list of my books here so I don't forget. One Must Go by Alex Reed. This is also on Kindle Unlimited, and it's a fantastic story. It's basically a legend in this town where every year, I think it is, 3 children are chosen, and one of them must be sacrificed to the underworld, basically to the dead. And the 3 of them have to make a decision. If 2 choose, then the other one goes. And then there's this kind of the Lord of the Underworld, who's basically this massive, great, big, burly biker, swigging alcohol, and he's very funny. And the kids are, you know, one of them is good, one of them is on the edge of being a little serial killer, and one of them is a star athlete. And they all fight to survive. And it's a great book. It's all about mythology and what would you do if in order for you to survive, you had to sacrifice someone else, someone you cared about. Would you do that? It's an interesting idea. Great book. Next, The Gentleman's Choice by Blake Rudman. This was sent to me by the author. This is basically a Bachelor, but with a lot of explicit shenanigans. So it's basically a TV show where the gentleman goes on a date for 4 days with a woman, and there's lots of shenanigans goes on, and I'm not quite sure how much I can say on this channel, so I'm going to be careful. And then the audience is basically a streamed porn, basically. Do you know what I mean? And on the audience vote on the 5th night whether or not they get to have, you know, a full night of passion. Anyway, the previous contestants are starting to be found dead, slaughtered horrifically, tortured, dismembered, and that's basically the story. It's a great thriller. It's a really good thriller. Some of the sexual scenes in this are a little bit extreme, so please bear that in mind, although it is all consensual pretty much. But yeah, just bear that in mind. But I really enjoyed it. It was a great thriller. At the end of the day, the heart of the story is this serial killer, and they're trying to find them. Next, oh, excuse me, Reader Beware it's by Fairies. It's a Fear Street anthology. It's a homage to R.L. Stein's Fear Street. These are cracking stories. Oh, I really enjoyed it. It's proper nostalgic, set in the 90s. Do you know, there's like manic Easter bunnies and aliens, and it's just fantastic. It's just such fun. I flew through this. This is out, I believe, in this month. I had an ARC from the publisher, but oh, it's such. If you love that kind of very nostalgic 90s Fear Street point horror kind of thing, you'll love this. It's also much more modernised. It's all written by modern authors, so there's a lot more diverse representation than there were in the original books, and that just enhances it. But the basic premise of every story is incredibly nostalgic. Great read. Next, Fleshed Out by Rob Ulitsky. This is a great cover too, isn't it? This is a collection of body horror, more on the extreme than the last one. The last one is YA. This is adult, and it is gory and gruesome. Everything you can imagine that you could do to a human body is in here. It's a fantastic read. If you like extreme horror, if you like body horror especially, you'll love this. I've never read this author before. I'm really impressed. He's a UK indie. Actually lives in Portsmouth, which is where my husband is from. And yeah, it's fantastic. And every chapter has got an illustration that's basically a scene from that story. So you get kind of an inkling of what's coming. Such a good read. Next, One Way Ticket to Earth by Daniel Vaccaro. This is a novelette. It's a bit longer than a short story, but it's not quite a novella. And the author sent me this very kindly as an e-arc, and it's about a boy who dies. His parents are devastated, but the mother completely believes that she'll see him again, as does the father. So that's very sad. That's where it starts. And then, many light years away, another planet, there's a tree that bears children. There are two of these. One is called Severn, and one's called Blilly. And Severn is absolutely adamant that his name is actually Max, the boy who died, and then he needs to get back to Earth to his parents. Anyway, so that's the premise of the story. And although he tries to adjust to this new world, which is very technologically advanced, he hungers for his family, and eventually he gets to go home. It's just the weirdest thing I've ever read, but somehow it works. Just such a great story. Very touching, very poignant. Yeah. And then my last Kindle for the month was Lullaby by Cecile Guilloux. Sorry, Cecile. My French is rusty after all these years. And this is a story set in, well, I think it's probably set in Victorian times. It seems like it is. About this woman who starts to have feelings for her friend. And so, because at the time women were, property, she's basically locked up in an asylum, and she meets these other two women, and they can hear this whispering lullaby, which they follow, takes them to a hidden, secret, neglected garden. This is beautiful. It's gothic fiction. It's stunningly gorgeous prose. It's just delicious. Yeah. Again, it's a fairly short novella, a couple of 100 pages, but really beautiful. Translated from the French, and worth a read. So that was my Kindles. We'll go on to... Oh, I'm missing one. Oh, it's up there. I'm going to have to flash a picture of it. So first up, 12 Bones by Rosie Talbot. I read this at the end of December, beginning of January, and this follows off where 16 Souls ended. Charlie and Sam can both see and speak to the dead. And in the first book, they were protecting the ghosts of York. In this one, they're protecting the living. It's just a great adventure. It's an adventure story. This one's far more action-packed. There's far more death and gore in this one than the first one. It's still YA, but the higher level of YA, and the mysterious hand show their faces in this, but it's such a cracking read. It's a proper adventure story, and it talks about family, found family, grief, loss, decisions, consequences. It's just stunning. And because it's Rosie, the LGBTQI disabled rep in this is fantastic. Such a good read. Such a good read. Great start to the month. Next, these are the physical. I've got the physical book, but it's up there and I can't be bothered to get it down. Next, I read Dinner Party by Daniel J. Barnes, and this poses the question: if you could invite 6 famous people to dinner, who would you invite? And so this person decides that's what he's going to do, but he's going to get lookalikes because the people he's inviting are all deceased, and he invites them all round for dinner. They have to stay in character. He's paying them very well, and then the night takes a little bit of a twisted turn. Oh yes. This again is a short, I think it's about 180 pages, 170 pages, but it packs a hell of a punch. It's a great little book. I love Dan. Dan's from the Midlands, actually comes from the same town as my family, so he's a great author. He takes things and just twists them, perverts them. I love that. So that was that. And then Irish again, Grim Portraits by Keelan Patrick Burke. These are 6 stories about the darkness of art. And as with all Keelan's books, this does not disappoint. He just has the most beautiful way with words. You just absolutely believe what he's saying. And in the midst of, he writes really dark and twisted, really unpleasant stuff. And yet the prose is gorgeous and you're compelled to read it, right? Because you're just like, this is beautifully put. It's horrible and it's a bit, but it's beautiful to read. So yeah, these are 6 stories about the darkness of art, basically, and there's 6 stories in here. Yeah. So yeah, it's a great book. All, by the way, all my full reviews for all of these books are on my Goodreads, SharronJoyReads, or Storygraph. And then we've got The Reformatory by Talana Reevy-Jew. This is a behemoth of a horror. They're not normally this big, but this is just, oh God, it's just phenomenal. I've seen it around on Horror Book Talk and Horror Bookstagram and Horror YouTube, and it is absolutely worth the hype. It's set during the 1950s in Florida. It's very, talks about institutional racism, the injustice of the legal system, and it's about this boy called Robert, 12-year-old boy who gets into, well, kind of, it's all kind of nothing for nothing, you know. He kicks basically this white boy because he's obviously black, and he's somebody he knows, but he gets thrown in this reformatory because he's done that, because obviously, you know, I'd do that in those days. It would infuriate you, this book, by the way. Anyway, but the reformatory is not all it seems, and the warden is sadistic, and children go missing and get taken to the fun house to be tortured. And the place is haunted by the ghosts of the boys who didn't make it, and Robert joins forces with them to escape. And meanwhile, his sister is trying desperately to save him through the legal system. It's absolutely fantastic. It's a big book. It's 600 and some pages, but it reads so beautifully that you just fly through it. I mean, literally brilliant. Sorry. Another tea drink. Next, we read for Tales Point Horror Book Club, the 3rd book in the Forbidden Game. I hate this cover, but I couldn't afford the 3 that I needed. The Kill. This carries on where the chase, is it the chase, the second one? Ended with they're desperately trying to save the people who've been trapped in the shadow world. And so this one is the best of the three, as far as I'm concerned. Julian, you get a bit more idea of what he's like and actually how much worse the other shadow men are. The teenagers in this are equal parts annoying and brave. Sorry, I had to have a break then. I had a coughing fit. Anyway, water to the eyes. Anyway, yeah, the teenagers are, oh, my voice has come back, thank God, they're equally annoying and frustrating and brave. And the whole of the Shadowland takes place in a shadow version of an amusement park, which is creepy in itself. There's some proper creepy moments in this, claustrophobic, gory, gruesome moments. It was absolutely the best of the three. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Then, YA Book Club with Amy McCall. We read Catch Your Death by Ravina Guron. This was absolutely fantastic. It's basically a locked room, closed circle murder mystery. It's a house in the middle of nowhere. And 3 teenagers are there for various reasons. One of them's broken down on the way to the grandmother. One of them is delivering a necklace to the owner. One of them is working in the kitchens for the weekend. And there's a snowstorm, so they can't leave. And the family, immediate family, and the daughter's boyfriend are in a locked room, in a dining room. And the 3 teenagers are in another wing and locked away. And the main lady dies. I mean, it starts with her dying, right? She's been poisoned. And then the story's told then through police interviews with the 3 teenagers. That's how the story's told. And it has twists and turns and the secret passageways and hidden weapons. And it's just brilliant. It's so good. Quite big for a YA, but reads so fast. You'll really love it. I loved it. It was brilliant. Absolutely fabulous. Very much in the style of Agatha Christie. And some of the twists you could see coming, some you couldn't. I love that. It was really good. And then finally, my friends, if you're still here, this was the book for my book club, my indie horror book club, Echoes of Home by M.L. Rayner. It went down really well. It's basically a ghost story. It's a man who has been taking care of his family, his mum and dad, and his mum's recently just died. And a strange brother turns up and says, look, I'm sorry I've not been around, but there's this cottage up in the Scottish Highlands. Here's the key. Just start your new life. So he does. He ups and goes to this tiny cottage. I don't know if it's that tiny, but in my head it is. In the Scottish Highlands, but the valley it's in is cursed, and strange things start happening around the cottage. The best character is a grumpy old man called Cools, who's just fantastic. I loved it. And there's ghosts and injustice. It also talks about, I've heard of the potato blight in Ireland that caused the famine there. I didn't realise that actually happened in Scotland too. I didn't know that. This was so that interesting, fascinating perspective. And it is about, skips between the current day, and that time when all the farmers were starving and the landowners didn't care. It's a great story. Really enjoyed it. My interview with Matt is on my YouTube channel. He's a really nice guy. This was his debut novel. He's written a couple of others since, and his writing is lovely. It's poignant. It's just beautiful to read. This was a pleasure. And a ghost story, because January is always about ghost stories, right? So yeah, that was my January reading wrap up. I really need to start doing weekly ones of these because it's too much in one go, innit? It's like 30 minutes I've been chattering now. It's far too long, especially when I'm not feeling well. But anyway, I hope you're all well, my darling. I hope you're keeping well. I hope you're reading fantastic books. And I will no doubt see you very soon for my February TBR. Take care.